Omarosa Manigault Newman has released new audio of a phone call she says she had with the President of the United States the day after she was fired by Chief of Staff John Kelly. Listen to this.
Omarosa, what's going on? I just saw in the news that you're thinking about leaving. What happened?
General Kelly came to me and said that you guys wanted me to leave.
No, nobody even told me about it. Nobody.
Wow.
You know, they run a big operation, but I didn't know it. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
God damn it.
All right, this comes a day after Omarosa released a secret recording of her conversation with Kelly the day he fired her. That meeting was inside the White House Situation Room. And the New York Times is reporting this morning that the White House believes there could be dozens of Omarosa tapes. Joining me now is Mark Short, President Trump's former White House Legislative Affairs Director, now a CNN political commentator. Welcome to CNN, Mark. Great to have you here on New Day.
Tom.
I'm sure this is exactly how you always envisioned being welcomed here with a tape from someone who worked at the White House, Omarosa, from the day after she was fired, a recording of a phone call she had with the President of the United States. Your reaction to hearing that?
Well, I guess my reaction is whether the president was aware or not, it seems that General Kelly made the right call there.
Do you think there's something odd or unusual about taping a phone call with the President of the United States?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it's odd and unusual. And it's, I think that in the beginning of the administration, there were concerns about people having phones inside the Oval Office. And General Kelly, I think, implemented a more stringent and appropriate protocol there. But I think the more shocking one actually is the Situation Room, because when you walk in the Situation Room, you have career national security officials, often those who are still active military, who ask you, do you have any phone or any device that needs to be turned into the lockers right here next to you as you walk in the door? So the fact that she would have brought in a recording device into such a secure facility, I think is an extreme breach of protocol.
I want to get to the Situation Room in just a moment, but just to stick on the phone call here, do you find it surprising that the president didn't seem to know that an assistant to the president, which is a high-level position in the White House, had been fired the day before?
I would think so. I mean, I think that General Kelly, as Chief of Staff, has broad discretion about staffing decisions, but I would imagine that he would have had a conversation with the president on that front. But as I said, either way, it's apparent that it's true that General Kelly made the right decision as far as personnel decisions there with Omarosa.
Omarosa says she felt the need to record people, and again, we'll get to the Situation Room in a second, and I don't know if she's including the president here the day after she was fired, but she felt the need to record people because there were so many lies being told inside the White House.
I never recorded anybody, John. I'd certainly trust the people I worked with inside the White House. I view many of them as friends, and certainly think that there were many dedicated public servants working there.
Maggie Haberman reports there could be dozens of Omarosa tapes. Do you have concerns about what might be on those tapes?
Well, of course. I mean, anytime you're assistant to the president, you're recording conversations that should be private conversations. So naturally, you'd have concerns. But I have no way of knowing whether there are or not, or what's possibly on those tapes.
Why would General Kelly bring Omarosa into the Situation Room to fire her?
Yeah, I don't know why choosing that location, but I think that probably are concerns about some elements of public firing of Omarosa, but why he chose that room, I don't know. Again, I think the bigger breach of protocol is bringing a recording device into the Situation Room in the first place.
And again, explain to us exactly what happened. Someone would have asked her directly.
Every time I was in the Situation Room, yes, there are two different entrances, and there's a national security official at each door, and there's a series of cubby holes where you can put in any of your phones or personal devices. You're actually asked not to bring any down in the first place. But just as a final reminder, if you walk in the door with one, they say, are you sure there's no personal devices? If so, here's a key in a locker, please lock them up. So to actually, I think they would have required not just willful disobedience to that, but actually lying to one of those people at the desk who asked for any sort of recording device.
To your knowledge, do you think that a law was broken in that process?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sure there's a legal precedent there, but certainly there is I think a significant national security concern.
Is Omarosa Manigault Newman the best people? President Trump always said he was going to hire the best people. Is she the best people?
You know, I think that Omarosa had served previously in the Clinton White House. She's somebody who had experience working in the White House. She was there to help with outreach and did work with historically black colleges and universities. But Look, at the end of the day, John, we all make personnel mistakes too, and I think that that's one that you can consider a personnel mistake. I do think, that there's plenty of hardworking public servants in the White House who, unfortunately, will all be tainted by having somebody who showed bad discretion.
Just a personnel mistake? Does that really encapsulate what happened here? You have someone whose relationship with the president seems to be as a reality show star. And then with Sarah Sanders, look, Sarah Sanders is understandably upset. I think everyone in the White House is understandably upset that Omarosa Manigault Newman was recording things, particularly in the Situation Room. But should they be surprised based on what her relationship was with the president prior to that?
Yeah, I think we're all surprised, John. I think to have the gall to actually bring a recording device in the Situation Room is pretty significant. And so yeah, I don't think anybody would have assumed that. Absolutely not.
Axios is reporting this morning that people inside the West Wing, inside the White House, were afraid of Manigault Newman. Do you believe that to be true?
I don't know that that's the case or not. I think that certainly she had her own relationship with the president that predated. Many people joined the campaign, and so there's certainly a respect there, but I'm not sure that there was the same level of intimidation.
What was the nature of that relationship? Help us understand what that relationship was. And I ask even now, because we now hear this recording where the president of the United States clearly is comfortable talking to Omarosa about something that happened with the chief of staff. They seem to have a relationship that transcended the official chain of command.
I don't know that it transcended the chain of command. I think it predated that chain of command, is a fair thing to say. I do think that the president enjoys having his own individual relationships with his assistants. Candidly, John, I did not work very much with Omarosa. My interactions with her were always cordial. We had different portfolios, different responsibilities, so it's a little bit hard for me to say, here's how people felt about working with Omarosa, but I think that clearly this is a pretty significant breach of trust.
Yeah, no, look, I have to tell you, I heard the recording. It is not often you hear a recording made with the President of the United States. It was surprising to hear a former White House staffer record a conversation with that. That, to me, is fairly shocking that it happened at all. Also shocking the President didn't seem to know she was fired. But let me also ask you about something the President wrote over the weekend about the Attorney General. He says our AG is scared, stiff, and missing in action. I want to ask you, again, you dealt with legislative affairs, but you deal with members of Congress. And every time the president writes something like that, the members of Congress we speak to cringe. They don't love, generally speaking, they don't love when he goes on the attack like that. What was your reaction when you were in the White House when he would say things like that?
Well, I think that the president still has an enormous amount of frustration with an investigation that he certainly views as a witch hunt. I think you have to keep in mind historic, I think, challenges in this investigation going back to enormous bias that was shown by agents that were sexting with each other, with those who said they would stop the president, with an assistant attorney general receiving contributions from Clinton allies, with now a deputy assistant attorney general whose wife was working for Fusion GPS that sold the Steele dossier, the Clinton campaign. So all that is backdrop, John, to an enormous frustration the president has is saying, what is going on at the Department of Justice? And so I think that he's one to share his feelings directly with the American people, and that's how he's doing it.
Well, look, the president can fire the attorney general, ask him to leave if he wants to. And you were talking about Bruce Orr, who does work in the Justice Department, whose wife apparently worked for Fusion. As far as we know, Bruce Orr had nothing to do with any of the FISA applications, correct?
John, I think that could be the case, but I think the reality is that there's been enormous bias that's been demonstrated throughout this investigation. I think that's an enormous source of frustration for the president. I do think your question about how people react differently on Congress. I think for me, the House members, they want to do their own investigation. They've been frustrated that they feel the Department of Justice has not shared enough documents with them. So they're fueling some of this. On the Senate side, I think there's a much greater concern that says if we had to replace Attorney General, it would be a very difficult confirmation battle, particularly in the midst of a Kavanaugh battle. So there's a greater concern on that side, probably.
There's no doubt about that. Mark Short, thanks so much for being with us. I do have the sense, Mark, that this conversation between us was recorded. Just so we're fully honest with each other there. Really appreciate it, and welcome.
Appreciate it.